Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our annual production of Voices. My name is Ana Furtado.
My name is Madeline Lavangi.
My name is Sarajam.
And we are the co-chairs of the Visibility 2021 campaign this year.
First and foremost, we acknowledge the colonial origin of Dartmouth College, founded under the premises of educating Native American youth and occupying the lands of the Abenaki, one of the 5 members of the Wabanaki Confederacy.
In this sense, such institutional work rests on the forceful appropriation of their lands by European settlers. As we recognize Dartmouth's colonial formations, we hope that audience members seek to learn more about the current and past stewards of the lands where they live, work, or study, and thereby consider how to stand in solidarity with Native American nations.
On behalf of this year's Student Planning Committee, we are both proud and delighted to initiate Dartmouth's second visibility campaign. Formerly called V-February, the Visibility Campaign reimagines Dartmouth's student-led campaign to promote gender equity and combat gender and power-based violence, with a focus on inclusion and intersectionality.
VFEB started in 1998 as a part of the V-Day campaign with the play The Vagina Monologues. More recently, Dartmouth students have expanded their understanding of the V-Day campaign. In 2019, we changed the V in V-February to stand for visibility.
And after much deliberation, committee members and OPAL staff made the transition from VFEB to the Visibility campaign in order to highlight the importance of intersectionality
and include voices and experiences that are systematically delegitimized and or erased, both within and beyond campus boundaries.
As we continue to reimagine, reinvent, repair, and build beyond legacies of exclusion, we invite the broader community to join us in our efforts to dismantle systems of privilege, normativity, and subordination,
moving against the disavowal of gender and power-based violence and towards more just and equitable futures.
Following the production, we hope you will join us on Zoom for a casual post-show conversation with our cast and directors.
This is a chance to engage with the Visibility Committee and Voices cast in a live question and answer session.
A link to the Q&A session will be provided at the end of the performance, both on screen and in the chat.
Before I introduce the directors, the audience should be aware of the following content warnings, as the production includes discussions of sexual assault, psychological manipulation, and sexual harassment.
Please refer to the chat for a list of support and confidential resources. Information will also be provided at the end of the performance.
I am now pleased to introduce
the student directors for Voices, Marina and Naomi.
Voices is a production created and performed by members of the Dartmouth community from marginalized gender identities.
It moves beyond the gender binary to center experiences and peoples at this intersection of power, violence, resilience, and gender, whose experiences are often undertold.
This production is part of Visibility 2021, Dartmouth's student-led campaign to promote gender equity and to end gender and power-based violence.
We are inspired by the movement for Black lives and seek to uplift voices of intersectional identities, recognizing that to end power and gender-based violence, we need to address racism.
As a warning, some of these stories reference violence. Please refer below for wellness resources.
This one is for all my thick folks, for all the folks who have never met the standards others set for them, for everyone who's ever felt their confidence wane while living, surviving, and thriving at Dartmouth. You're beautiful. We're beautiful. She folds like the dough my grandmother kneads, worn, tanned hands, scarred, wrinkled, crooked, and still she works. She folds. My body folds. Rolls appear as they always have, dimples and curves present exactly where they've always been, and still she works. She moves, she dances, she lives, and she loves, and even when she's rejected, when she's objectified, when she's leered at by strangers and ridiculed by friends or family, still she works. She bends, she breaks, and still she works. This body, this softness, she is me, and I am nothing without her. Without her intuition and guidance, her support, her love, her beauty, her curves and folds, I am nothing without her. For she holds the memories of ancestors, thick arms and thick thighs from grandmothers long past. Matriarchs live on inside this body, and without her, that knowledge is lost. She folds like the dough my grandmother kneads, worn, tanned hands, scarred, wrinkled, crooked, and still she works. Who are you to judge another? This body, this softness, she is not yours, and she owes you no explanation. No explanation for her softness, no explanation for a soft tummy and thick thighs, no explanation for living and breathing. This body, this softness, she is me, and I am nothing without her. So I will protect her with everything in me. Protect her from you and your perceptions, your critiques, your lingering stares and judgmental whispers, even if sometimes I have to protect her from my own hateful thoughts. Because even when she folds, she still works, she still dances, and she still lives beautifully. Like the dough my grandmother kneaded, worn, tanned hands, scarred, wrinkled, crooked, still she rises. So I will worship her, even if you don't. Worship her softness. Worship her curves and folds. Worship her strength and resilience. This body, this softness, she is me, and I am nothing without her. So I will worship her, because even under all this pressure, all these gazes, still she rises. Like the dough my grandmother kneaded, worn, tanned hands, scarred, wrinkled, crooked, still she rises.
It's the way women get literally judged for just existing. And I wish I could say it was just men, I really do, but unfortunately, internalized misogyny adds a new culprit to the narrative. I mean, don't get me wrong, men give women shit for everything. I mean, if a girl or a woman wants to play sports or wear baggy clothes or, God forbid, like boy stuff, like superheroes, they get hit with the, you like sports? Name every sport player to ever exist and the color of their underwear. Or with the you only like superheroes because Chris Evans is hot. Do you even read the comics? When the reality is that she can outrun you, outspike you, outscore you any day, and then take a break and read her large stack of comic books. So yeah, women get enough gatekeeping from the boys. So why are they getting hate from their same gender peers? Oh, she's a tomboy. I bet she's only doing it to say she's not like other girls and get attention. Or my favorite, she hangs out with so many boys. She's a whore. When in reality, she's just living her best life and trying to be herself. It's crazy. Women are so quick to build each other up, but at the same time, let internalized misogyny take over and judge other girls for just existing. We need to unlearn. Because at the other end of the spectrum sits a girl who likes to wear pink and bedazzle her nails and just wear clothes that make her feel like a goddess. And men would be like, oh, she's easy because she wants it, which is not only disgusting, but completely wrong. And then girls would be like, why is she dressed like that? She's a slut. She's setting feminism back 1,000 years. I don't understand. Why can't we just let women like what they like and just do whatever the fuck they want without having to say something about it? Because if I want to be a housewife who outdrinks her partner in her big platform boots, so be it. Or if I want to be a sugar baby who plays ball in her pretty pink boa, so be it. Men don't get to have an opinion on women's lives and choices, and neither does anyone else for that matter. And as women, we really need to unlearn the internalized misogyny that has been taught to us, because it's ugly. We need to become the women that support women, all women, and not just those that look and act like us.
In my last dream about my ex, he shouldered his way to the edge of the table, where I laid bare on the sterilized countertop, unmoving, waiting to be torn into.
It is with a precise kind of disorientation that I recall memories from my teenage years. Moments of intimacy are particularly exquisite and painful and hazy. When I was 15, I thought that intimacy was procedural. In fact, that might be too kind of a word for the way I describe it. Intimacy was a dissection. My ex, with all types of clinical sterility, would pick me apart until I was nothing but a collection of limbs and secrets. The grammar of intimacy has always been unsettling, hasn't it? Lay yourself bare and let another person see you, shivering and utterly silent. Ask for nothing in return. At the age of 15, I wasn't used to such bodily experiences. Once in a while, I thought as special, like clockwork. He told me that he loved me like clockwork. I told him that I was afraid to grow older, that I wanted to die, that life was too tender a creation to be wasted on me. He nodded. These are all the things you're supposed to tell other people when you've been together for this long, right? He nodded. Is there anything you want to share with me? He nodded. I love you. Reciprocity is not in my vocabulary. And after he had picked me apart, I would ask him to reconstruct me, to tell me who I was, that I'd become everything he thought me to be. All of the other iterations of myself that existed were meant to get lost in translation or in someone else's memory, which was something like their first death. So then the question becomes, what kind of masochist wants to return to that? I have a habit of romanticizing moments that don't deserve to be memories. Don't people crave intimacy in all of the worst ways? Isn't love a little painful and unforgiving and bloody? Am I only ever asking to be known? When I braced myself for another dissection, I asked my ex to recognize me before I recognized myself. Or I asked him to scrape something out of my chest so that I could remember that a heart caved open still knows how to love, but does it while crying. Tell me I'm real and not just a figment of my own imagination. Tell me that everyone feels the way I do. Tell me that you see me like this and you still love me, that you know me and you'll still stay. Tell me that loving is not only the aching, but also the running until you're out of breath, the falling all over the pavement, the streetlight that flickers like a morning heartbeat, the unfolding, the flooding, the quickening, the lungs filling with Earl Grey smoke. Doesn't intimacy make you feel like you exist, even if only for a second? I mean, I must be myself because you took me apart and told me so. I woke up before he reached for the scalpel. If I finished the dream, I imagined he would end the procedure and leave me at the table. Afterwards, I would stare at myself in the mirror to make it last longer. Reopen the wound by burying my fingers in it and watching it bleed.
Mannequin in the corner of Abercrombie and Fitch. Abercrombie and Fitch was the deal. Dim, dark lights exude sexy, too sweet aromas. The cool kids crowd. A preteen, I follow my mother inside. A single mannequin in the corner of the girls section wears only booty shorts. Blue and white striped. She's missing a top. I do not know my hand as it reaches for her right boob. Immediately, hot hands. Immediately, I'm not lesbian. Just curious about the material that makes the mannequin. By the time Mother circles back to me, I'm smelling the colognes, eyeing the flat tummies on the front. Mother shows me a blue and white striped t-shirt stitched with a funny logo across the chest.
When I was a kid, I loved running. Not running like cross-country or track or marathons, but running around. Speed for the sake of the breeze blowing back my hair and the combination of sun and energy warming my skin. When I sprinted during a game of tag, I felt invincible for those moments, like the rabbit that beats the fox to the warren. As long as I kept up my momentum, I could stay ahead of my pursuer until they gave up the chase. Of course, I didn't win every game of tag. I might stumble, or slow, or fail to fake a turn quickly enough, and then get myself caught. But that's the way of the playground, and one lost game of tag is forgotten when the next game starts. Getting older meant fewer playgrounds. I traded the law of the jungle gym for the code of ill-fitting expectations. I wasn't picked on in high school, and I wanted to keep it that way. Luckily, maybe, my teachers, my parents, and my peers all seemed to have a certain image of me. Smart, quiet, polite, easy to place on a pedestal. And it's not that those things were wholly untrue, but I was just a teen and far from perfect. So I did what I thought was best, upholding those expectations at any cost to myself. I cobbled together my homework by the last minute, had my breakdowns in the privacy of my bedroom, and, most of all, curbed my tongue. I kept my stronger opinions to myself, and stayed largely quiet about the issues of my identity. I thought that behavior would keep me safe, and I wasn't wrong. I slipped palatably through high school and out onto the far side of the graduation stage. I was aware that I couldn't keep up the same appearances throughout college, so I didn't. I came out as trans and started thinking and expressing myself the way I wanted to. No looking back, I told myself, and headed boldly down a new path, one that made me happier. I was happier being myself. If that was true, though, I thought that I shouldn't have still been struggling with myself, struggling with academics, struggling to keep it together day to day. I would go home for breaks and see myself fall into old and destructive habits. I would go back to school and try to ignore the fact that those habits clung. But I refused to acknowledge it. I felt like if I did, it would be as good as admitting that I hadn't changed after all. So I ran from that old self. I stopped looking at my old pictures and writing. I fell out of contact with people I'd been close to. I ran, a rabbit through the trees, racing to a warren that never got closer. I ran, certain I could feel the hot, enslavering breath of my past self as it hunted me. I ran, convinced that I could break away if I never missed a beat. I ran, until I couldn't. In quarantine, after so long of running, I finally had to stop and live with myself. Which, honestly, meant that my brain space got worse, not better. Without places to go and productive routines to keep me busy, I stagnated and took worse care of myself. But I realized, recently, that running from my past self was an endless act of self-loathing, not an act of love towards a newer me that I might like better. Learning to love my current self does not need to come at the expense of prior iterations of me. I can reach out and hold my child self's hands in mine, touch my teen self gently on the shoulder, give a comforting hug to myself of months and weeks and days gone by. I can say, I love you, and I will never again be you, in the same breath. I can run into the future if I want. I think I will choose to walk instead.
Wednesday night. I used to think that love was warm, smiles, and butterflies, and skin softening under the brush of fingertips. But you taught me that love is cold, sharp, bitter, and pretend. My skin bristled under your touch, my mind screaming, telling me to run. But I stayed frozen, paralyzed. The white sheets melted into a puddle of glue under my spine, pulling me down and down and down. I closed my eyes, but my mind is stained with your memory, and my body with your bruises.
You were my best friend. You had also been sexually harassing and assaulting me for over a year before I finally cut you out of my life. We met our freshman year of high school, and I thought you were such a kind, smart, funny person. That's why we became friends in the first place. I also soon realized that you had severe depression. So severe you would come to school the next day with cuts on your wrists. So when you started touching me in places I didn't want anyone touching me in, I wanted so badly to tell you to stop. Keep your hands to yourself. But then you told me you would cut yourself again. I was scared of that. Do you remember that mandatory presentation by our teacher on sexual assault? She recited the definition, and for the first time, everything you were doing to me made complete sense. You see, when you're 14 and naively dumb, you don't know a lot of things. All I knew then was that I hated lunchtime because that was when you would approach me. I hated you being close to me, touching me, looking me up and down. I hated the feeling of your hands against my skin, and I hated how I never had the guts to stand up for myself. After each time, I wanted to tear your touch out of me. I would sob until my eyes couldn't see anymore, and then I would get up and move on with my day. When you don't know the word that gives an experience a name, you think it's just you. You sat on the other end of the classroom that day of the presentation, and I remember locking eyes with you. You refused to look at me. I think you knew what you were doing, but that didn't make you stop. For the longest time, I thought it was all my fault. I never explicitly said no, but I made up every excuse in the world not to see you. Sorry, I have a club meeting. Sorry, I'm feeling sick today. Sorry, I have to tutor someone. But what was I sorry for? You should have been the sorry one. I was too scared to confront you then, but me now, 6 years later, is stronger, more powerful, more confident than you made me out to be. And I wish I could look you in the eye and tell you the truth. You are an emotionally manipulative coward, and you're fucking sick for taking advantage of a 14-year-old.
Men are trash. He's literally trash. That's what my friends tell me when a guy hurts my feelings. I don't like going to sexual violence workshops. I know that they're a good thing, that they're changing things for the better, but they always make me wonder if I'm someone who's experienced harm. Men are usually the perpetrators because men have power. I've heard it again and again. In 9th grade, I told a counselor at a Southern Baptist camp that I was confused about my sexuality. She told me that Satan was tempting me. I felt horrendous, so I confided in a friend. She didn't say anything. Turns out she had a crush on me. I didn't feel the same way, but we stayed friends. Then she told me that she couldn't stop having sexual feelings for me. Then she told me that she masturbated to me. Then she told me that loving me made her hurt so badly that she wanted to bang her head into a concrete wall until her brains came out. Then she started stalking me. Then she wrote a fan fiction about me online about how much she loved me, yet I didn't love her back, and how angry she was at me. She always asked for hugs in front of other people, so I couldn't refuse. Once at a church hangout, she opened the bathroom door when I was naked. I was getting ready for a shower, and the other girls laughed, thinking it was a joke. She just smiled. I thought I deserved it, that Satan was tempting me, and God had somehow sent her to stop me. It's taken me years of therapy to recover, though. I don't think I've completely healed. I don't know if I'm allowed to complain, which sounds stupid because if anyone else were in my situation, I would tell them that they were valid. I stopped going to church as much after her. I don't really like hugs. I didn't really like them before, but now I really only feel comfortable getting hugs from people who I'm comfortable with. I get nervous when people tell me that they have feelings for me. I still see her around. The same friends who say that men are trash tell me that she's changed, that she's a really good friend. I've gone to birthday parties where the host knows what she's done to me. It wasn't until recently that I realized that I'm allowed to say no. I deserve to say no if that's what I want. I once read an article about people who have experienced harm from women. It said that it's a lonely experience, especially when you yourself are a woman. I can assure you it is. I didn't want to tell the story. I didn't want to write it. I didn't want to read it. It makes me embarrassed and ashamed. But I know it's important. I'm telling you my story for those of you who have had harm done to them by women to make it a little less lonely.
To the boy next door. I once called you neighbor boy, capitalizing the words in my head as if he were some superhero who had swooped into my life the first day of O week. The real you could hurt me with a single dismissive comment in the hallway or by looking away as we crossed paths in Foco, but neighbor boy was thoughtful and kind, and usually very drunk or high or a combination of the two. When I think about that confusing year living next door to you, I get a headache. It's an internal battle against self-blame, self-hate, embarrassment, and shame that only gets harder with time, as the details get fuzzier with each day, month, term, and year since. I learned a lot from you. I learned to wait. I learned to hate myself for waiting. I learned to hide things from my friends and hide things from you. I learned how to drift into a fitful sleep with tears in my eyes and my cheeks burning. I learned to protect you instead of me, choosing to bury way back in my mind the details of those nights you'd come into my room drunk, sloppy, pushy, touchy. This is not the first time I've written this letter to you. I wrote version 1 freshman winter when things were so confusingly, simultaneously both high and low, both really good and really, really bad. A thin wall separated me from you as I sat down and tried to write down what falling for you had done to me. I racked my brain trying to document each detail, in hopes that maybe with enough evidence I would be able to come to a logical conclusion for why, against a mountain of reasons to, I couldn't let you go. I remember so many things you said to me on those nights when we'd lay in my bed, me sober and dreading an early morning practice, and you definitely not sober and definitely not in a place to remember anything you'd say to me the next morning. Almost every time you'd ask me, "What do you want?" I'd respond with something like, "Ice cream," which would make you so frustrated, but how could you possibly expect me to give an honest answer when you refused to tell me how you felt? Hid the time we spend together from your friends and would ignore me outside the walls of our dorm rooms. I cared about you so much. Above all else, you were one of my closest friends, and the thought of losing you or scaring you away with my feelings was terrifying. When I finally asked you why you couldn't admit to caring about me too, you said that you just really wanted to avoid either of us getting hurt. What I didn't tell you was that I was already hurting. It was too late. I'd already fallen, making nearly everything you said and did a source of pain. And I know I didn't make it easy either. I had my role in whatever you want to call this. I closed myself off and took my own insecurities out on our friendship, and for that, I'm sorry. I know now that I don't owe you anything. Not an apology, not a minute more of my time spent waiting and wondering, but I'll give you this, neighbor boy. I'll say goodbye with my answer to your infamous question of, what do you want? I wanted you to stay. I wanted you to be patient with me. I wanted you to hold my hand in the daylight. And I didn't want to tell you this, in case you would shut the door to my room forever and never walk back in. And now, I want you to know that I'm okay. I'm stronger, braver, and better off, in spite of you.
Hey y'all, so what I'm about to say may be controversial, and some may be deeply offended by what I'm about to say, but bear with me because it will start to make sense once I finish talking. So, ever since I can remember, I've had more guy friends than I've had girlfriends, and I never had a problem with this until I started to be judged for it. All I did was make friends, and all of a sudden I'm not like other girls, or a pick-me girl. And I have to admit, I have never experienced girls supporting girls. And I never trusted girls, because I never had an authentic connection or a friendship with them. In high school, one of the popular girls immediately hated me, because the guy she had a crush on flirted with me. And there was a group of girls, these girls that I initially thought were my people, bullied me throughout my entire senior year. And after graduation, I asked one of them, I said, "Why? What did I do wrong?" And she admitted, "We were just jealous that you had so many guy friends and we had none." And after I was sexually assaulted, a female teacher blamed me, told me it was my fault and that I was asking for it. And rumors about me were spread by a group of girls. With guys, though, it was different. It was so much easier to become friends with them. We shared the same interests, the same sense of humor. I just felt safe around them. And I was never into cheerleading. I was on the basketball team. The funny thing is that I'm not pretty, I'm not cute, I'm not popular, whatever. And most of the boys in my life are just friends. Literally, no romance whatsoever. And for a long time, I wished I was a guy. I wished I could hang out with my friends and not be judged that I was desperate for attention, that I just wanted to be one of them. And then I came to college. And for the first time in my life, I was a part of a girls' friend group. And I met so many amazing women who loved me and that I loved back. They empowered me and they gave me confidence and they gave me love. I was loved by a female peer. And this probably sounds so stupid, but being in that friend group made me so fucking happy. I can be friends with girls. And it wasn't weird. And I just met the wrong ones in high school. So, to all the people who thought I was a pick-me girl, you are so fucking wrong. You were just the wrong ones in my life.
Why do you think it's okay? Why do you think it's okay to insist, to stop for a minute, only to continue, to question my decision, to question my denial, to question my stop, to question my desire or my lack of it? Why do you ask me if I'm old school? Why do you care? What if I am? What if I'm not? You say I'm that kind of a girl. What do you know? Why do you assume I'm spending the night? Why do you make me feel bad for not wanting to do so? For feeling uncomfortable? For simply not wanting it? Why? Why do you think it's okay? Why? But more importantly, why did I think it was okay too?
She was the only one in the room not wearing a mask, so I remember her face clearly, hovering above my hospital bed. In a haze of unfamiliar syllables, hourly temperature checks, and IV drips, I recall hearing the doctors caution Señora Vanessa against her proximity to my bedside. The pneumonia, they told her, was very contagious. She will do well to remember her 3 small boys at home, to step back, to leave me in their care. With what I would come to know as her characteristic persistence, Vanessa did not budge. I drifted in and out of consciousness, feeling her callous palm in my own, the gentle touch of her fingers as she pushed damp locks of hair back from where they had fallen into my eyes. As I finally began to regain strength, Vanessa caused me to speak, patiently repeating and rephrasing words that I could not understand, while dually permitting me the time and space to consider both my responses and their Spanish translations. Her questions gently inquired but never intruded, meandering into my consciousness in a way that was unfamiliar, while satiating a desire for unconditional compassion and tenderness that had previously subsisted unnamed and unaddressed inside of me. I had prepared myself to wade through the waters of illness and recovery alone, expectant of little from a woman who had met me less than a week before. Yet, nothing could have prepared me for the possibility of unconditional love that was offered to me, nor the unabashed frankness of its delivery. Even at times when I had nothing to offer and nothing to say, even as I wept silent tears for the pain and the fear of it all, Vanessa stayed. The woman I would come to know as my Peruvian host mother represented something entirely new to me. A version of womanhood and motherhood that was foreign to the professional and dispassionate worlds I had grown up in. Surrounded from my earliest years by a circle of women who had clawed their way into the top of male dominated professions, The highest aspiration of womanhood, as I knew it, it was to give up that which made you feminine. Displays of affection, warmth, and vulnerability were presented as antithetical to the ultimate goals of capability, responsibility, and achievement. Love, as I knew it, was a short-time reward for satisfactory performance. Its absence was not personal, but an indictment of failure to fulfill the professional responsibilities and qualities that I, as a young, ambitious woman, would one day be obligated to replicate in the workplace. Yet, lying listless and frightened before Señora Vanessa, I experienced for the first time the possibility of strength without the loss of the female qualities that I had long precluded from the condition of contemporary mothering. In an instant, my sickness prompted my Madre Peruana to give up her job and domestic responsibilities to be with me. For Vanessa, her commitment to being there as my mother transcended any other considerations. I needed her, so she was there. To Vanessa, I was never a statistic, a probability, or even a possibility. I was simply her little Majita, her daughter, a condition that all on its own fulfill all of the prerequisites and necessary conditions to being loved.
Hibernation, or finally 18 and the world shuts down. In the darkness, your eyes slowly adjust. Seaweed, plumes of unearthed muck. A silver glint cuts through the opacity and darts by you. You're calm. You can breathe at the bottom of this crater lake, and you're calm, safe. Sediment settles around you in silent layers, and you're calm. Sigh, and the sounds are caught in bubbles like little fists catching fireflies. Hello! Hello! Another silver glint shoots past you. You realize these aren't fish, but little pinging trails of electricity that feed into you in one infinite gossamer net, undulating ever so gently. Furrow your brows. Listen. Can you hear it? The pings separate into muffled laughter. It's thin, unnatural, like the distant clink of ice cubes. But it's the only real light down here. The rest is just a diffuse afterglow of someone else's memory above water.
It's a cliche, I know, but I remember so many visceral shocks of learning my parents determined their own moral codes. I remember asking my dad where the weird protein bars in the kitchen cabinet came from. I was stunned to see him smile and shrug when he told me he took them from the lunchroom at work. I was a teacher's pet. I followed every rule I could, and I assumed adults didn't even have to think about it. Even if it didn't hurt anyone, he seemed almost mischievous, something adults never were. I think that's the most attainable happiness, sneaking out of class 5 minutes early, indulging in a cappuccino for no special occasion, even when it's cheaper to make coffee at home, spending an afternoon doing nothing. I'm still trying to get better at enjoying those things without justifying them. When I'm not focused on anything, my mind sometimes floats to how I would explain my gender. I think some part of me is convinced that the exact right metaphor would pinpoint how I feel and, in one fell swoop, both explain that I'm queer enough and make myself easily understandable to people who don't experience what I do. Naturally, I'll never be empirically gender fluid or gender queer or under the trans umbrella. No amount of hormone therapy or number of costume changes would scan as authentic and real trans. Without at least 45 minutes of effort, I'll be ma'am at the grocery store. I'll never be genderqueer beyond a doubt. I didn't work hard or earn or deserve to be a Sam who uses they, them. I just want to, and so I will. Every day I count among my blessings queer people of color, lesbians, trans femmes, and the black trans women who led the way. Feminine queer people who seek femininity despite societal expectations of masculinity reassure me that femininity is not simply an acquired taste. Girlhood isn't something I'll grow into like I thought I would. Naturally, I'm angry at the way women and femmes are treated under a patriarchy. Selfishly, I'm angrier that I thought woman was a category in which I was supposed to want to be. Because I sometimes align much more closely with man than woman, even the times when I do align close enough to a woman where I can't really tell the difference are contextualized by experiences different from many of the girls I know. I'm in a ghoulish, uncanny valley of womanhood, but I've always loved performing an approximation of femininity. Even then, I'm not a girl, I'm a bitch. I'm not a woman who loves woman, I'm a dyke. I feel best in heels when I see my leg hair, coarse and manly, erupting above them. I caught my reflection in the mirror this morning and I stopped for a minute. I realized that it didn't look nearly as much as a girl's face as it did to me a few weeks ago. There is, and I need to say this because when many people think non-binary, they think of a white person with female secondary sex characteristics. No objective way to appear non-binary. There isn't a non-binary look. Except in that moment because I decided I looked that way, without proof or permission, and because there are some small pleasures I intend to take from the world, my own.
Safety scissors. Not meant for cutting hair. I meant to stop kids from doing what I'm doing. I'm one of the kids who needs to be. That's a lot of hair in front of me. This is not even at all. This is so much fun. I love having short hair already.
I feel anxious. I cannot focus. I cannot connect with God. I am surrounded by many people, but I feel lonely. Empty. I am in the prayer room, but I can't connect to God. My mind is running. I'm thinking of the century-old structures that have led the men in the room to assume their position in the front and decide on my behalf that I pray at the back. I am thinking, are they thinking? Do they feel what my body feels? My body feels gendered, sexualized. My body feels the burden of the label too distracting to be in the front of men when praying. Do they feel what I feel? Will they understand what it feels like to be a nuisance?
There's something to be said about a safe space. One's in the home, one's in the world, and one's inside my head. Something they all hold in common, I don't know what they look like. At least, not yet. There is a space that I enter, in the return from the day's travels. At once I enter a battlefield, unpredictable, unsuspecting, violent words of belittlement, of insecurity disguised in an attack on my own formation. Ones that hit the heart because they come from the source that sourced me. Something burns deep when caregivers do neither the caring or the giving. The words, "You don't know anything about the real world," I vividly recall were spoken to me by the supposed voice of reason himself, coming from a parent of mine who brought the real world home every single day in the worst of ways. In running away from this space, I create my own world. My own mind for many years has been my own escape from such realities. This is a minefield of its own. It's a maze that I fight anxiety at every turn. Thoughts that spiral as I turn them away or turn around in ignorance. As it turns out, hurtful words batter my mind too. Anxiety spins in place within my memories with no safe space in sight. With this, I chase the whole world instead. The runaway, the thrill, the distance I can possibly instill from the pain that I battle with every day. Words tear at my being, thoughts burst out my skull faster than I can shut them down. Distance, distraction, whatever it takes to find a way to relax. Spaces I once ran to, actions that I took, served only as distractions and pain, in spaces that aren't actually safe at all. Endangerment of my own doing, where insecurity took me down the wrong path, to the wrong people, and ended in pain, yet again, in the real world. In my own efforts, the real world I foster is my safe space. When I escape to search for beauty that I find in the world, the family, the friends, Mother Nature's place, spaces and places of choice that uplift and build rather than break down. They are places where life doesn't hurt as bad. On my own volition, these places are the realest ones to me.
We would like to thank all of the wonderful cast members and writers for their dedication and commitment to the production and process. The Opal staff, especially Danielle Hussey and Amanda Wong, the Visibility 2021 Committee co-chairs, our editor, Alex Davis Lawrence, and the Hop at Home team, especially Karina Sains and Todd Campbell, for helping put together an impactful and thought-provoking program.
Please join us via the Zoom link below for a cast talkback and a chance to find out whether you are a raffle winner. If you haven't filled out the raffle form we linked in the comments, you still have 10 minutes before it closes.
Thanks, Naomi. You don't want to miss the raffle. We have hoodies, books, and a wellness app subscription giveaway. Take care, everyone.